Oi bruv, it's Tuesday, innit?
Oh my god.
Me and my fellow man them gonna go down to the chippy and shank a couple of people, innit bruv?
Oh, great heaven!
Then I'm gonna go eat a packet of Wibbly Wonka Chimpy Chomper Knobbly Deliciousness Crunch, British, before I pay my respects to Lizzie in her tomb.
Disgusting!
Did that make the British people in the audience cringe? Good, me too. Americans have found another way to make people uncomfortable that isn't just living in a burning shithole of a country. Then again, misrepresenting how another national identity behaves is a habit that's so deeply woven into their history that I can hardly blame them. But we're not here to talk about what minority the federal government seeks to oppress next. No, we're here to talk about the smaller and less ferocious burning shithole across the Atlantic Ocean. Britain. A country of rich history, amazing cuisine, and stalwart people.
What the fuck? You're walking a fucking ostrich, you daft cunt!
As a half-British man, I lived in London. I've been well raised, matured into a fine knife-wielding hooligan like any Londoner worth their salt, and come to appreciate the finer points of the capital, such as really bad road congestion,
The light's green, but hold on, it's a fucking line!
the stench of piss, really crazy people, and gang violence. So when I saw Top Boy released another season earlier this year, you could goddamn bet I was gonna check it out. I've never spoken about something like TV shows on the channel before, and I'm not going to be discussing the things you would typically see in a video for it. I know nothing about cinematography, and I think Blade Runner 2049 was a boring movie, so if you're expecting a British version of Your Movie Sucks, that's not going to be it. Instead, I want to break down why Top Boy is such a great piece of British media for you. Americans may struggle to understand the world of the British, but fear not, my freedom-loving, gun-wielding, meat-eating, cardiovascular disease-having, minority-shooting brethren, for I shall not only break down Top Boy, but also show you why I consider it to be a piece of peak British media. An important thing to be made aware of is that Top Boy is actually two different series. You see, it actually debuted as a drama called Summer House, a show where two run-of-the-mill gang thugs, Deshane and Sully, want to become the top boy of the Summer House Council estate. A lot of characters come and go in the span of this series, but Deshane and Sully are considered the main protagonists, or at the very least, central to the plot. The problem with the two seasons of Summer House is, succinctly put, it's fucking garbage. At first glance, it seems okay, it's serviceable, but the biggest issue is that the story takes a central focus on kids. And let me tell you, British child actors suck. As a once child actor, I understand the nerves involved in performing, not to mention the difficulties on part of the crew that come with selecting the right kid to put in front of an audience of adults and have them act out of their comfort zone. It really must have been difficult for Ghislaine Maxwell. I hear that Elon Musk has some very specific tastes. That being said, I have to hand it to the Americans. Your child actors are way better than ours. Maybe their acting abilities are better sourced because from the get-go they're being raised on PragerU videos, so are better able to act and partake in make-believe fantasies. Meanwhile, our government just neglects our children, so they're constantly in a state of apathetic shock. Whatever the reason, a lot of British child actors suck. I mean, God, how can you take this scene seriously when a kid's acting is about as believable as the dog he's holding?
What the dog?
Unsurprisingly, this show was made and run by the BBC, a national broadcasting company that is rapidly running out of valuable cultural exports beyond regurgitating whatever Tory nonsense has been said in the last week to senile old racists. After season 2 aired in 2013 and concluded with this, the BBC pretty much dropped the project. The ending implied a third season, but it likely was never going to see the light of day. But then came along a certain singer and rapper that we all know for a variety of different reasons.
Good morning, USA.
Drake became producer for Top Boy in 2019 and brought the show to Netflix around that same time, making plans for its revival as far back as 2015. The series made a significant step away from the original BBC episodes by removing the Summer House title and instead focusing on an almost entirely new cast of characters. There's quite a big jump from here to here, so I'll quickly catch you up to speed. Deshane Hill escapes to Jamaica after the law converges on him following the showdown in Season 2. In Jamaica, he's tangled up in a robbery gone wrong, where he shoots his partner that was leveling his weapon at an old woman. Turns out that the guy he shot was a runner for a local drug kingpin, and in order to negotiate his life, Deshane offers to expand his business into London. Sully ended up in jail from the last season after he was caught in lieu of the heist. Being years on the inside has rewarded him with some unfriendly colleagues, and he decides to deal with one of them by using a London classic. With Sully out of jail and Deshane back in the UK, the duo are back at their old shenanigans once more in their quest to become top boy and bring in enough money to... Wait, who the fuck is it? Jamie is the newbie on the block, part of a gang that works for a Mr. Modi called the ZTs, a certain individual who's not having the best time in jail right now. Him and his buddy Kit work to bring the gang into infamy across London and stake a claim to the riches that the drugs game has to offer. With their current dealers, the Turks, driving up prices and violently dealing with any low-selling competition, Jamie decides to offer them a deal they can't refuse. Just like that, this show has already got me more invested than I was during any of the Summer House climaxes. Trust me, don't watch Summer House. It's best to treat everything that's mentioned as happening before Top Boy as just exposition. In the first episode, so much is being done so skillfully. The length of each installment feels justified because of its effective use. The gap from Summer House to now is being bridged, stakes are being set, allies and enemies are being introduced along with all the motivations each of them has. It's captivating to watch even in the low moments where people are just being people, where they're living their lives separate from the violence and paranoia of gang life. With Deshane back in London, Sully out of jail, and Jamie acquiring newfound aspirations, the stage is set for an intriguing three-way conflict between greed, ego, and rage. That being said, every episode is almost an hour long, and across the 2 seasons there are 20 episodes. In a story about gang violence, urban life, and making ends meet in the modern day, it kind of feels like missing the point if all I do is obsess over plot points. So instead, I want to take a crack at talking about the characters and covering what themes they explore in the show. That's right, welcome back to English Lit GCSE. In the original series, the writers failed to create this moral grey aspect to him that I could clearly see they were going for. He's a violent drug dealer that wants to do anything to be at the top, even if it means inconsolable consequences, but simultaneously he's someone who has a soft side for those he loves and befriends. Problem is that there was such a disproportionate way up between these two sides. In Summer House, he's almost heartless, and the way he behaves around and manipulates people who don't deserve it makes this dynamic of relentless leader and empathetic comrade unbalanced in an unfavourable way. In the new show, Deshane Hill is no longer an insufferable prick, first and foremost. He's still full of himself, he's a cutthroat and he plays unfair, but it's balanced with more positive aspects of his personality this time. He cares about those in his tribe, he pays his tributes to the community that raised him, and he learns from the countless selfish things he did. In the first season of Top Boy, there's a lot of friction between him and the new blood of the gang, coming to terms with the new wave of moody recruits, and a lot of it stems from his perception that he's the head honcho and deserves respect inherently for the life he's lived. But that life he's lived isn't one that brings him complete pride. In Season 2, Deshane needs to launder money in a discreet way that will still bring him out a large sum of cash. One of the suggested methods is the Summer House reconstruction project. Investing into it will promise him great returns while also cleaning the cash he's made, even if said project is having threatening letters left at the doors of old vulnerable residents who are now being sent to other parts of the country as part of a forced eviction. People that have made connections with their community being uprooted by force. A committee of residents formed to protest, and his mother is part of said committee. Deshane goes and tries to convince his own mother to move away, that he'll buy her any place she wants to live in. She refuses. All the sacrifices paid for his violent life culminate in a call from his brother, where he's told that his mum has died while he's out doing gang work. Deshane's character across the 2 seasons, in my opinion, has been about the repercussions of gang involvement, of how his sense of pride is derived from work that ends in death and destruction of community and individual alike, sometimes directly from his own hand. It's not to say he hasn't had selfless moments. Even putting money into the reconstruction came with the belief that it would help the community make their homes in a place that wasn't a crumbling, neglected shithole. But for Deshane, the money has always come first. Deshane, in my opinion, explores how greed ruins all. Sully is an inverse of Deshane's cautionary tale. While Deshane's realization of all he's sacrificing for his greed dawns on him, Sully is already lost in the throes of his regret. In Summerhouse, he was Deshane's right-hand man, killing who he asked and roughing up who was needed, but Top Boy rolls around and he's a man on his own. A close friend of his dies in a fire lit by local Rees-Mogg supporters because the tenants of the flat aren't from England. He's ambushed at the funeral for said friend by someone from Jamie's gang, and then ambushed again at another location because Driss sold him out. Sully then has to kill Driss for what he did, and when he finds out that Jamie is brought into the gang in the next season, the guy whose gang put Driss up to the betrayal in the first place, it feels like he killed a best friend and orphaned a young girl for nothing. Sully spends most of his time in the 2nd season of Top Boy away from Deshane and Summerhouse. He's on a boat, rendered a miserable recluse by all he's seen and done, and the only time we ever see Sully experiencing another emotion is when he's filled with rage. He kills one of the men who helped torch the house with his friend inside. He beats up the thug who got his niece into a spat with local drug dealers, and then beats up the local drug dealers just to cover the back of this ungrateful brat. And even then attacks Deshane for how used he's felt. How when the ZTs made an attempt on his life at the funeral, Deshane hardly cared. How he felt that despite all he had done for Deshane, he was still seen as another grunt. Rage is all Sully knows beyond misery, and it gets him in deep shit time and time again. This portrayal of the character as a tortured man who knows his way around the dangerous confrontation street life brings not only makes Sully so compelling, but a character I enjoy rooting for because of how badass he is.
Double kill. Triple kill.
And then that brings us to Jamie, the hot-headed newbie that goes head-to-head with Summerhouse in Season 1 and ends up working for them in Season 2. He's intelligent, he's charismatic, and he's involved with the intrigue in ways that make him interesting. He knows he's not the biggest fish in the pond, he knows he's not the strongest fighter, but his brain and wit help him move around difficult situations. I like to think Jamie represents ego. He's considered to be one of the main characters, but contributes very little to the success and completion of Summerhouse's aims. If anything, he becomes a thorn in Deshane and Sully's side, even when he's supposed to be working for them. It's only when Sully gets involved that the issues in Spain are resolved. I like how, even unintentionally, the fact Jamie is considered a main character, and yet causes the most internal problems, showcases Jamie's out of touch views with his importance in the gang in the first place, and how hopelessly out of his depth he was the whole time. The people he laid out at the beginning of Season 1 were child's play in comparison to what Deshane expected him to deal with in Spain. But I don't think it's out of narcissism. Jamie always has the central motivation of being the carer for his brothers. He's coming home from drug deals and going to parents' evenings. He's making sure they clean their rooms and wash their dishes. He's checking in on their education and their financial situations. Jamie goes to jail for his younger brother when Summerhouse plants drugs on him. When contrasted with Deshane's greed and Sully's rage, the guy's an idol of selflessness. But Jamie's spree as head of his ZTs made him both overconfident and naive. Working as Deshane's runner abroad shows he's far from the legend he thought himself to be on the London streets, and his own innocence and naivety don't fare well in the face of the cutthroat mindsets of his own employers. With his best friend implicated in the murder of a young boy that worked for the gang, and his attempts to backstab Summerhouse in Spain, he soon finds out that his ego is far from bulletproof. Top Boy is centered in the grand old city of London, aka Big Ben's End. As a result of this location, it's only natural that we have a lot of cultures and ethnicities being represented in the show. European, Middle Eastern, African. It's refreshing to see a series not be focused on a cast of predominantly white British actors, to truly reflect how diverse Londoners are. But a lot of these foreign gangs through Summerhouse in the first season of Top Boy are usually inflated threats. The Turks in the first season get wiped out at the end of the first episode. The Albanians in Summer House have zero presence and only really contribute to disposing of this annoying kid. A lot of these foreign gangs become key opponents in the plot of the show, but because they never really do much, it becomes a struggle for the viewer to both see them as a threat and an intriguing tool in the plot. But Top Boy Season 2 does not have this problem. The show begins with this handsome guy, Emilio, taking care of business as head enforcer of a Spanish drugs gang. He's important because he helps ensure drugs being manufactured in Morocco make it to Spain. The only problem is that they're not needed in Spain, but instead the UK. The only way to do that is through a national police captain called Juan Bueno, who will look the other way and provide the drugs gang's safety if they pay up the right price. It's soon revealed that Juan has turned sides for a buyer who can flash more cash, effectively placing an embargo on the drugs coming through. This becomes a central point of conflict in Season 2 of Top Boy, and it works really well. An important asset to these kind of shows is intrigue. You want the viewers to be invested in the ongoing events, have an emotional stake in the shifting narrative, and that can only really be bought if the narrative is both complex enough to be worth paying attention to, but simple enough that it doesn't become a chore to understand. The Moroccan gang and Juan Bueno's corrupt thugs form tangible threats that have character, presence, and narrative implication. What's even more impressive is that this is done through very minimal use of action scenes. In Summer House, the Albanian gang really only is shown when something violent is going on. A roadside shooting, a heist of their hideout, and that's really it. The action was lackluster both because it was shot really weirdly and because likely there wasn't much budget for it in the first place. In Top Boy Season 2, you seldom see action. When you do, it's brief, it comes as quick as it goes. Its brevity makes it far more shocking than entertaining, especially when it's used in key scenes of betrayal. And that makes these moments so much more valuable and worthwhile because of how sparing they are. Instead, the bulk of the show is fostering that intrigue, furtive conversations about washing money, delivering drugs, and occasionally about laying someone out. The Moroccans kill no one, apart from that one guy, and still contribute so much to what's going on in interesting ways. The conflict occurring on the shores of Spain and the dense urban towns of Morocco do a lot to make Top Boy an interesting show that doesn't rely on gunshots and violence to keep... Okay, I'm lying. The real main reason this is so important is because I want to fuck Emilio. In shows about organised crime and gang life, it's typical that a lot of the cast at the forefront of a plot's movement are men. These series are dominated by male protagonists and usually become known for them. It's a shame that we don't see a bigger repertoire of media with strong women at the forefront. Films or shows that make their mainly female cast evident in advertising and promotions usually draw the disdain of ugly incels that will never see a vagina in their life. So when I saw Jack in Top Boy taking a big role in how events play out, and being met with positive reception, it was really refreshing to see. Jack, in my opinion, is one of the best characters, if not the best character in the entire show. She's essentially the head enforcer for the Summer House gang, ensuring all their members stay in line and all their enemies stay dead, and she's excellently acted throughout. Hearing the actor talk normally in an interview is just such a stark contrast to how she talks in the show, and there's a lot of talent on display for achieving such a transition in language so believably.
Can we have this little chat with your mum? See if she knows anything.
Don't, please, I'm begging.
Then stop fucking talking, you dickhead!
You'd be surprised I'm actually one of the softest speaking people you could ever come across.
You are?
What can I say? It's very easy to get angry. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So where it's very easy to get angry, you just have to tap into that hood side of you. Everybody's got a seriously hood side. You just don't know it.
Jack's badass, her dialogue's great, and her presence in whatever scene she was in was never unwelcome. She carries herself through the show with an unshakable loyalty and dedication that makes her a reliable asset for the Summer House gang. That means a lot because based on her early interactions with Deshane, that's not very easy to earn. To me, Jack isn't a token strong woman character. A lot of shows write the strong women to be persistently abrasive, completely infallible, and they also have this haircut. Seriously, why is this so associated with a strong woman? Is pigeonholing female strength into one set of emotional and physical characteristics what we call feminism now? A lot of protagonists in these shows are written to be complete idols of masculinity, even during the mundanity of regular life. I like Jack because, yeah, she's butting heads a lot and she's being abrasive to those around her, but she's not trying to be Max Payne 24/7. Across the 2 seasons, Jack has 2 love interests. The first is a woman called Maud, and the second is a woman called Bex. In both scenarios, especially the latter, she's evidently somewhat flustered and is unsure of what exactly to say. This happens to such a degree in season 2 that Bex almost takes it as her being rude. I like that this stereotypically masculine character gets to let their guard down and be vulnerable around others sometimes. What I also like is that Jack is a great example of gay representation in media. A lot of writers create LGBT characters just to teach a moral lesson. To have a fated scene of someone being homophobic and then having a chunk of the show dedicated to saying that it's wrong. It's a valuable message, and it's objectively fucking correct, but it becomes counterintuitive because writers then neglect to give the LGBT character actual substance beyond the moral lesson. Said character ends up becoming a cardboard cutout reading "Don't call me a slur," and that's it. I like that Top Boy doesn't have it constantly brought up by other characters or have it exist purely for the sake of a moral dilemma. Her relationship with Beck is genuinely lovely to watch, and for LGBT viewers it means the world to have sapphic romance be so visible on a mainstream TV show. The only time homophobia is really looked at is in episode 2 of season 2, when, after her date with Bex, Jack is beaten up by a gang of young Tory members who yell at them for being lesbian. Now, there are stories that build themselves entirely around this awful struggle LGBT people have in the modern day, where they have to try and exist in a world that so readily hates them without valid reason. And while these are valuable tales that should be told, Top Boy doesn't feel like a show that is that, or really needs it. So imagine my glee when this arc is resolved at the beginning of the next episode, with Jack being told one of her friends has caught the ringleader. She turns up, she beats the ever-living shit out of him, and then leaves his homophobic ass sprawled across the pavement without any repercussion coming from it. And just in case I have any, dickheads watching this that see this as political, that they think it's wrong and crass for a lesbian character to be so visible in this show, and they preferred the original Summer House because the BBC would never try and appeal to those commie libtards, I strongly hope that you also get beaten up by a nondescript lesbian woman, and that your life's meaning only serves as a brief but satisfying moral lesson, titled "Cry About It, You Silly Cunt." While a lot of the main plot comes from the ongoing events in London and Spain, the show also takes a focus on the life of our runaway with a runaway mouth, Lauren.
Hello.
After the events of the first season, she makes an escape to Liverpool and is living with her soon-to-be husband Curtis, a black market arms dealer.
Hello!
Living with them are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. In their first interaction, one where Lauren complains about the presence of guns in the house, it's rapidly established that this guy's a bit weird and this lass is a complete bitch. Genuinely the most I've ever disliked a character, this actor nailed her portrayal. But this only acts as a way to lull you into a false sense of security with Curtis. Soon after the spat, Curtis goes upstairs and apologizes to Lauren in a soft-spoken voice. He's kind to her, he speaks with affectionate words, and is seemingly sincere in his infatuation. You're so distracted by the sting of his sister's venomous tone that you welcome this at first. Curtis doesn't seem like such a bad guy. At least she's gonna get a loving hubby and a lovely house out of it. But you're wrong. Oh, you are so wrong. As the episodes go on, we get more looks into this new life of Lauren's. She has to make phone calls in the bathroom where the others can't hear her or know that she's talking to someone else. When Jack visits, Lauren has to leave almost immediately because she has to be back in the house by a certain time. Curtis's sister swipes her phone from her, and Curtis then proceeds to tell her that she shouldn't be using the phone so much, but it's gonna hurt the baby, and that she's getting emotional because of her hormones. The soft tone and loving gaze become more insidious as time goes on. This new life of Lauren's is more akin to a prison sentence than a second lease on living, and it works. You see, the typical depiction of domestic abuse in media usually is far easier to spot. husband hits wife, husband bad. Hundreds of middle schoolers on the internet make My Little Dark Age fan edits about the husband because they too hate women. It's unfortunately an accurate depiction of how imprisoned some women end up being in their abusive marriages, but a lot of the time it's the only way these relationships are portrayed. It's almost done because it's more palatable, it's more straightforward. For anyone that was happy with Andrew Tate's ban, you see this and immediately come to hate the abuser. In my opinion, it's a roundabout way of the show telling you to dislike this person. But with Curtis, it's very different. He's not physically abusive, he's emotionally and mentally manipulative. He's gaslighting Lauren, he's isolating her from the outside world by stealing her phone, he's financially controlling her by keeping her credit card, and all of it is being done with a sickening charm that forms a strikingly accurate parallel to how a lot of these disgusting people ensnare innocent, unknowing women. As Lauren becomes more and more wary of how evil Curtis is, so does the viewer through her perspective. You come to embody Lauren's fear and paranoia because you are the one having to realize how insidious Curtis is instead of immediately seeing that he's a piece of shit in his first appearance. We saw what Curtis was like when Lauren makes her escape attempt in a taxi. He's a desperate, frenzied, controlling psycho that'll do anything and eventually turns to violent measures to get back what he thinks he owns. Every scene that he's in carries an oppressive weight. When you have these subplots in media like books or shows, I usually find myself coming to hate them. They're often boring and they take me away from the stuff I'd actually prefer paying attention to instead. But in Top Boy, that's not the case at all. This arc with Lauren is equally worthwhile to the main plot, not tangential. Its worth is actualized by the insane performances of Curtis, Lauren, and the twits. The ambivalence of Curtis's malformed and weird love for Lauren, Lauren's terror, and the chaos it stirs up never makes me feel like it's wasting my time. It culminates in a fantastic concluding scene where Lauren has Curtis come to her alone before she pulls out a knife and stabs him to death. The struggle is messy, it's bloody, and it ends with Lauren bawling her eyes out over something she didn't want to do, but knew had to be done to be free from Curtis's stranglehold on her life. I rewatch this scene because Lauren's lack of experience wielding a weapon is so believably conveyed in her terrified screams as she attacks, in Curtis's swift but weakening retaliation over his ambusher, and her shell-shocked breakdown over his corpse. Never from a show about gang violence, produced by fucking Drake by the way, did I expect such a potent portrayal of abuse, mental torture, and infliction of long-term scars on a woman who just wanted to get away from one danger and ran headlong into another. The main cast of characters like Deshane, Sully, Jamie, and Jack are caught up in a lot of the developments of the ongoing plot. High-stakes scenarios that put both money-making opportunity and life on the line. There's very little time that's available for these characters to be exploring this theme without detracting from the storyline. So kid characters such as Ronell, Jem, Stefan, Atz, as well as family members, do help us to explore this theme in greater detail. Ronell's entire involvement with the drug trade comes from his mother being admitted to a mental institution. He's left on his own with no way of making money or looking after himself, and eventually turns to growing weed with a pregnant woman to make ends meet. This decision he's forced to take lands him in a bunch of trouble with the Summerhouse gang, a group who goes after his friend Jem because they believed he snaked them out to get their drugs stolen. They track Jem to his school to try and snatch him, but when he escapes, they kill his dog. In season 2 of Summerhouse, Vincent, the man who helped Ronell grow weed, entraps Jem under a £25,000 debt for letting the weed equipment get damaged. Jem ends up taking jobs from the guy to cover the debt in a sickeningly real portrayal of how drug gangs terrify kids into doing their dirty work. Both Jem and Ronell end up entangled in the dark threads of the drug trade and suffer horribly for it. It meets a satisfying resolution where Jem's father stabs and kills Vincent, followed by both Jem and Ronell moving out of London starting life anew, but it's a cautionary tale that not everyone makes a clean break from. Atz's mother is service noticed by the government that despite her many years of working in the NHS, she's being deported. In a vain attempt to get her to stay, Atz and Stefan take it upon themselves to raise money. They tried to steal a dog to breed puppies and sell them before eventually turning to desperate measures and agreeing to take drugs to Manchester for Summerhouse. The kid is literally chicken shop groomed, given a cell phone, made to feel real welcome in the gang, only so Summerhouse can leverage him to plant drugs in Jamie's flat. Him working with the gang ultimately leads to his death in season 2. Kids like Ats and Jem and Renell do it because of one word: poverty. Most of these kids hardly have homes to go to. Their lives are unstable, their living conditions are tantamount squalor, and their prospects in life are few and far between. They get groomed into an easy way out, tempted by free fast food and phones and new clothes by people who could not give a shit about their life. If they don't get killed, their tenure kills them in a different way. They forego education, so lose job opportunities. They surround themselves with romanticized ideals about violence that poison them into crude thugs. They become unquestionably loyal to people that do not care, and they grow up to ruin the communities they once wanted to help. They create casualties of people that aren't at all involved in gang activity. A friend of Renell's mother is killed trying to save Renell. A woman who was unfortunate enough to witness Summerhouse kidnap a rival leader she was sleeping with had her child stolen to buy her silence. Deshane's brother Chris is tortured with a clothing iron, and Deshane's cousin Donovan is killed in Jamaica. A young girl called Tilly is put into an intensive care unit from a drive-by intended for Jamie. Jamie's brother almost gets sent to jail because Summerhouse plants drugs on him. A Middle Eastern couple has their house set on fire by racist youths. Gang violence and gang activity becomes an offshoot hazard of impoverished communities that only makes life worse for the most helpless there. People like Deshane and Sully and Jamie are bastards for putting places they supposedly love through all this hell, right? You see, topics like this are tricky because we tend to see cause and effect as very short-term things. The situation's bad because Sully did this, Jamie did that, Deshane made this person do this, and then it immediately led to this happening. And this isn't necessarily incorrect. One of the things I love about the show is all the characters are interesting and worth investing in, but they're still bad people. Deshane has that woman's baby stolen, he manipulates a lawyer he was sleeping with into going along with it, and he almost steals from his own elderly mother. Sully sends Driss out to harass a kid and kills Jamie in front of his brothers, traumatizing them. Jamie has a group of teens attacked with acid and knives for dealing drugs in his area. These three are not good people, and are responsible for a lot of death and carnage in Top Boy. Arguably, however, they're victims in a lesser capacity. They've been raised with only one solid out that can keep them afloat. They've lived lives where survival is only guaranteed through being ruthless. They didn't get to dream of normal jobs, of stable lives, of happy families, because they would never have the money for it. I don't think Top Boy is showing us that Deshane and Sully and Jamie are monsters of varying severity, but instead that poverty is a monster that consumes all from its victims, talent, potential, longevity, and is inflicted on the working class by negligent governors and people who get paid £100,000 to become Prime Minister, ruin the country, and then just fucking leave. That in a system so heartless to the plight of a modern man, whether you're involved in gang activity or not, you're having to fight for your life because the people at the top are too busy playing by a different set of rules. That the only way to make it for some is to become cruel bastards serving at the behest of their own greed, rage, and ego. And that at the end of it, you can only ever realize just how stuck you are.
What else is there? What else are we gonna be?
Top Boy is a brilliant show about the messy and violent nature of gang life, of how money in hand turns once well-meaning kids into apathetic crooks because of a social structure that pits working class people against one another for their own survival. It's a stark contrast to the shallow nature of a typical British television show, and it fills me with a tiny bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, this sad island of ours does have a valuable story to tell that isn't just repeating, we're really going to leave the EU this time.
Rubric.